Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. All right. Hello, welcome everyone to our webinar today. I hope you're having a wonderful Thursday, kind of a pre-Friday to your Friday. A few things to mention before we jump in. You may have noticed that when you first joined, all your mics are muted currently. If you do have any questions or comments during the presentation, we do encourage you guys to utilize the chat function during the presentation, where our team will be able to quickly reply to you and answer any questions you may have. Once the webinar concludes, we will be moving into a live Q&A section, which we will then allow users to unmute mics, ask questions in real time to our team, but more on that afterwards. At this time, I am going to hand it over to Michael to give you all a brief message. Over to you, Michael.
Hayden. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the SharePoint Concierge webinar. I'm going to take 45 seconds here just to welcome all of our clients that are participating today. If there's any guests today, this is your first time. What we've done here with SharePoint Concierge, the way Microsoft rolls out new features across 365, Team, Stream, Planner, Power Platform, SharePoint. We've noticed as we launch projects and intranets for clients that they can go down the road and be unaware of these new features. And most of them are just things you can activate. So our goal here, we started this a couple of years ago, is to give you information on what's new across that Microsoft stack. So you're going to see several presenters today. If you're a SharePoint Concierge client, you'll get the slide deck on our tenant, and you have access to that. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to Hayden and let him give you a little bit of an agenda and overview, and we'll jump right into it.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. We do have a jam-packed schedule per usual, maybe even more jammed than normal. We do have a wider range of features and topics to go over. We're starting off strong with Ken Lewis, who will be teaching us on Microsoft Word Business Connections. Following Ken today, we have John, who is showing off the new Microsoft List feature that allows you to be able to drag and drop items and reorder them. Finally, it's a great feature that's coming available soon. We will then switch over to Leona Lamont, who is bringing us up to speed on how to pull and create SharePoint Advanced Management Reports. You do not want to miss that one. Katie will then teach us all about page anchors and bookmarks for those pages that have the more long formats to them. And then last but certainly not least, Dylan will be showing us a new feature on how to dynamically pre-fill values in Microsoft Forms. As you can see, we do have a lot of ground to cover today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in with the first topic of today, Microsoft Word Business Connections, taught by Ken. Over to you, Ken.
Great, thanks, Hayden. Yeah, so Microsoft Word has been an integrated part of the suite of tools in the Microsoft universe from day one. And I'm sure most of us on this call have used the tool for quite some time. The issue that we've run into with the integration with data is that up until very recently, tying it into SharePoint dynamically so that you could create documents usually involved custom code. There was the ability to do a one-to-one document library build where you could add columns to a document library and then embed them into a Word document that was tied to that library. But that was a very limited approach because most business data has a one-to-many or a many-to-many type flavor. And in those cases, when you have something like a resume where you have multiple sections in your education block or multiple sections in your experience block, there wasn't a really easy way to integrate that data. In addition, because the columns had to be tied to that document library, if you had data in lists and you wanted to create Word documents or a PDF, you had an additional set of steps you had to go through. Again, more of a custom code approach. Well, now with the addition of a Power Automate action, which allows us to build out these Word documents, you really have a great approach. You've got the ability to do this dynamic pull from multiple lists. You can pull from libraries as well if you want to, because it treats all the data the same. And then you can integrate that and put it onto a single document. So you have a solid report coming from 5, 6, 7 different sections. And we're going to take a look at a demo today. One term I do want to call out because it's critical to making this work is you're going to hear the term select. That's a type of data operation within the Power Automate universe. And it allows you to take those multiple selection areas. So again, if you think about a resume, if you think about how the experience block in a resume lays out, or the education block in a resume lays out, you have multiple line items related to that one resume. And in order to have that one-to-many relationship presented in one block on a Word document, you need to use some data transform. And that's what the select is going to buy us. And so we'll take a look at that in more detail when we take a look at the flow itself. So I've got a quick demo. I'm going to go over that with you, and then we'll take a look at how the flow works, and then we'll wrap up. So let me share my desktop out. So we've got the ability to do a very straightforward resume example here, where I've got someone's resume and they have additional information. In this case, I've got their experience and education here. And then we're going to integrate that into a template, which is this word template here for the Vias Corporation. So I've highlighted the fields in yellow that we're going to fill today. So we've got their name, we've got a proposal number, we've got where they're working currently, where we plan to have them work, and then we've got this block here, and this is the one-to-many block. So this is going to have as many line items as we have coming from our data source presented here. It looks like one record here, but it presents in a one-to-many format. So once you have the flow written, triggering the flow and running it is just like any other flow in Power Automate. And so in our case here, we have this as a manual flow. So we would select the person's resume. We go up to our Automate. We tell it to create the resume. At this point, because we're manually triggering the flow, we have the ability to collect information. So we could have multiple fields here on our import form. In our case here, we have our proposal number. So we'll enter our proposal and we'll run our flow. So we'll give it a few seconds. It actually does run very rapidly. And again, we're going to output to Word today, but we could as easily output to PDF if we wanted to. So we'll jump to our document library. And we've got our resume. So we'll take a look at that now. And so we have our template. We've got our yellow fields. And now we have our filled out version. And so we've got our proposal number, we've got the person's name, we've got their current work location, their proposed future work location, and then here's that block again showing in a many record format. And we can do the exact same thing across the rest of this form. The way that this is done is that when you're in the template itself and you're in developer mode, you actually have all of these field types that are available to you here. And so you can highlight a block of text and then you can insert a field, and that field then becomes available to you when you're in Power Automate to address it as a fill for data. In the case of this block here, you actually have two layers going on. You have each individual value. So you'll see as I highlight degree, it has a slightly darker color. And then we've got the year received, the college or the university, and the major. And then that is surrounded by a larger block, which tells it that it is actually a one-to-many relationship and that there might be more than one row that's going to get filled here. And the select statement that we'll take a look at will then fill this value here. So if we look at the Power Automate flow is actually very straightforward. We've got for our selected item, we do a pull then of the item again. And the reason for that is that when you're doing a manual trigger, it does not actually give you the full payload of the record. It gives you a subset of the fields that are available to you. So the get item gives you the full index of fields available, which means then you can use all of them, throughout the flow. If you just stick with this one here, you're limited in what you can use. We then do a get items. This is actually grabbing all of the values from the education list. Then we do our select processing. So the select processing is where, again, we're transforming those individual line items that are coming from this second list here, which has the 3 records in it. We're transforming those into one array that can then be inserted into our Word document as a single block of text. The way that the tool works is that each one of these values here is a value that you're creating and naming, and that you're then mapping one-to-one within the system that's going to be your template. So if we look at the template example here, and I come in and I look at degree, I can come and look at the properties for that, and you'll see it is mapped to degree. And so that's the one-to-one mapping. I'm designating that this value is degree, and then in the Power Automate flow, I'm making the same designation here that I'm mapping to degree. We then populate the Microsoft Word template. You'll notice the one-to-ones are very straightforward. Current work location, I map it to whatever field value it is. Employee name, I map the value. It's the education, so education, experience, credentials, certifications, those kind of one-to-many type relationships within a resume type structure, you would have these outputs of these select statements that you would want to then populate. And then we've got our proposal number, which is coming from the form itself. Once we have this, this is just the body of a document. It isn't actually the document itself. So we have one final step, which is create file, and that's where we can then populate this shell of a document with the body action, which is coming from this. You could, of course, have an email sent to somebody letting them know the resume was available, take any other actions Power Automate has. You could, again, output to PDF if you want to. But this approach here, this Word document approach, particularly with this one-to-many action block here, to me adds so much power to reporting. I actually have a client who we were struggling with this very issue when this came on my radar, and it made solving their business problem. They have an audit issue where they have to log a physical version of a receipt of a particular type of work action. There were many one-to-many relationships within that receipt. And so being able to build something like this was great. Audit loved it. And so I think this is going to be a fantastic thing to have in your back pocket. There is one caveat. This action is not a standard action. It is a premium action. So you will have to pay for a premium license in order to use it long term. But that to me is the only gotcha, because the build out of how you work with the template and the build out of how you work with these select actions is actually very straightforward once you've worked with the document itself. I would say that if you have an hour or two to transform a given document, you can probably get fantastic results just with a little bit of playing around with the tool. I found it incredibly easy to work with and highly recommend it to everybody. So thank you for your attention. Back to you, Hayden.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, as he was showing, resume building for reporting tools or even receipts, but it could also be useful for, some different project management tools, project POs or SOWs if you have to send that out to a client, or even, if you had a board of committees or a board that you have to report to, having that data all within a single list that you can quickly spin up a document for, it could go the extra mile. So thank you so much, Ken. That's going to be super helpful for a lot of clients. I just know it. Now we will go over to our next segment, which is taught by John, who is teaching us about the new drag and drop feature that is showing up on Microsoft lists. Over to you, John.
All right. Thank you so much, Hayden, and welcome everyone. Hayden, while I do a quick intro, if you could bring back up the presentation, that would be awesome. It disappeared once Ken stopped sharing. There we go. Thank you so much. All right. So this is a new feature that's coming out soon, which personally I'm extremely excited about. What it is it's going to allow you, when you build out a SharePoint list, if you want to reorder that list, which is something I struggle with all the time. I feel like I'm doing battle with Microsoft lists constantly. What you can do now is you can actually drag and drop your list items from where they are to where you want them to be. Very, very cool. So what we're going to talk about today, of course, is Microsoft lists, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And specifically, we're talking about rows that you can manipulate in these lists. So what I'm going to do here is move over to, I'm going to show you my screen and show you the fun that we're going to be able to do here pretty soon. So here's a really great example. You've got a list, right? Like, let's say as a PM, I'll spend hours building out a project tracking list, right? Get it to perfection. Everything's in order just the way I like it. Everything is looking hunky-dory great. And then I'll have a meeting with a client, and all of a sudden we have a new, hot button item that needs to get done right now. Now I create a new task. It goes to the bottom of the list, or it goes somewhere in the list funky, right? And I have the hardest time getting it to be at the top of the list where I want it to be, and actually make sure that that is our priority for everyone to see. Now as you can see right here, we can take items, we can click on it, we can drag it anywhere we want in the list. So if all of a sudden we create a new item and that's top priority, we can click it and drag it all to the very top of the list so it's top, front, and center for everyone to see. And as you can see in this example as well, you can click multiple items. They don't have to be next to each other. You can pull items from multiple places in your list, pick them all, drag them up, and they bunch together as a group. So you know that they're all items that are going to work together. And you bring them up to the top of the screen, boom, there they are. Top, front, center, ready to be used. Just wonderful. Can't wait for this thing to be put out, honestly. And one thing I will note here is that you can see we're looking at the updated, what Microsoft calls the updated list view, right here, where we see the views are strewn out across the top of the page in tabs, which is wonderful. This may be rolled out on some of your sites. It may not. Microsoft's been pushing this out for a couple months now. And honestly, there's no real rhyme or reason to how Microsoft pushes these updates out. I've seen on multiple sites, right? So I've got a client, they have multiple sites in their site collection. They're all under the same domain name, right? And one site will have this modern view, or sorry, this updated list. These are all modern lists. The updated view, right, of lists. Some in the same exact site collection will still have the typical view that we're used to. You have a drop down, we have to choose your different views, right? I even heard a report of someone where in the same list, they had in one view, they had the updated view. And if they clicked on, the calendar view or the board view, it would actually change back to the traditional view you're used to. So Microsoft is always very interesting the way they push out updates. But these are these are rolling out slowly but surely, right? You'll see them coming soon. And one thing to note is once you click and drag these, what it does is it automatically puts your list into a custom order for everyone. So when you click and drag these, everybody that has access to your list now sees the exact same view as you do, where these items that you just moved are at the top of the list. Views for everybody. If you, for any reason they don't like it, they can come back in here and they can move out of the custom view and go back to the view that they like. But just a wonderful feature that I personally can't wait for them to put out. It's going to make everyone's lives so much easier. And you can see there's going to be same situation in board view. You'll be able to click and drag items around where you'd like them to be. Same with the gallery view. You'll be able to switch in gallery, click an item, and move it around anywhere you'd like in the screen to make more sense and more rhyme and reason to how your list functions. Great feature. So yeah, as you can see in our personal, in the dataBridge environment, in my test environment, I don't have that current view. It'll come soon. I see it all the time in, yes, I see a question that just came up. Yes, it does work in counter view. I don't have an example of that right here, but it does work in counter view as well. And I do believe that was everything I was going to present today. So with that being said, I'm going to hand this back over to Hayden.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. Microsoft does a really, really good job at being on the cutting edge of things, whether that be AI and all the Copilot capabilities or new and improvement ways of doing things, that sometimes it almost feels like we move so quickly that there's some things that are just missed along the way. So I love that Microsoft is going back, making this a new feature that's rolling out soon for those lists. So be on the lookout for those. With that said, we're going to go ahead and move over to Leona Lamont, who will be sharing a little bit about SharePoint Advanced Management Reports. Over to you, Leona.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Yep, I'll be covering the SharePoint Advanced Management Reports, which are going to be new report features allowed inside of the SharePoint Admin Portal. These ones that I'll be covering today are going to be the site setting changes, the organization changes, and sharing links. The site changes are going to be more applicable to adjusting things on site collections, so changing owners, members, visitors, things as such, adding new sites, deleting sites. So that's going to be the site changes. And then the organization changes are going to be kind of really more applicable policies on the SharePoint admin portal in relation to the idea of configuring storage limits, notifications, retentions, and things as such. Also, as a little bit of an asterisk, this does require a SharePoint Advanced Management Plan 1 license to run, so just be aware that this does come with an extra cost. So to begin, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our admin portal here. So to engage with any of these kind of new reports, there would be a new section inside of the reports area. So we are on the home page of the admin portal. Underneath reports, there will be change history available to you now. And so once you come into here, you have a UI that shows you kind of all the reports that have kind of been ran within your organization within the last 180 days. And so this is where you can go ahead and build a new report. So you go ahead and click on the new button. And again, you have the two options available to you. Site settings, which is probably the one that you are most likely use just based off of getting a quick audit of what's been going on in your tenant versus, again, organization settings, which will show you where those really are going to be trackable in a second. So in essence, you go ahead and give it a selection, and then you give it a name. You give it a date range in which you're expecting to get the results back from. So if you say, hey, you know what, I think in the last, since the 1st of August to now, I want to get a report of all the sites that have been modified from a permission standpoint or deleted type of idea. You can specify different site collections. So if there is a couple of sites that you really want to do this report on to see who's been changing permissions on that site, this is going to be a way that you can target those. There's also the capability of targeting specific administrators as well. So if you say, hey, I know this isn't going to be a global admin, I think it's a SharePoint admin or a site admin, this is where you can go ahead and try to target those specific ranges or users to find out their actions specifically. So once you kind of click through this point and you're happy with your report, you can go ahead and say run. So we're going to say, maybe we keep it all sites and all global admins. We're going to say from, 8.1 through 9.19, all sites and all users. And then we go ahead and hit the create report, which then it begins to run. Microsoft just says this will take a couple of hours. Again, realistically for us so far, it's only within an hour or two of us hitting this run button. And then once it does finish running, you'll kind of get an indicator saying that it is complete. It'll tell you the total number of changes that have occurred. And there'll also be a download button. Now, this only gives you a download button if by chance there are results. So as we can see here on our organization changes from 9.4 to 9.11, there was no changes in our organization. So therefore, there was no report to get downloaded. But if you do click this download button here, go ahead and kind of show what those reports look like. Now, I did convert this into a table just to make my life a little bit easier. This comes over kind of as a CSV initially, so therefore it's just comma delimited values. But in essence, this is kind of a printout of all the things that have been happening. So we can kind of get the date that the thing happens, the site in which it occurs at, the user or groups of the action that's performed. So somebody changed the membership of a group, the user who changed the group membership, and then also what group was somebody added to type of idea. So again, group owner, Andre added somebody to the group owners group. If we kind of go into here, we can kind of see, hey, there's a lot of different actions. Again, they can really be boiled down to adjustment of permissions, adding users to groups, changing the owners, and again, owners and site owners versus group owners. Again, that's going to be related to group sites versus SharePoint site collections. Users who have created sites or sites that are deleted. This is going to be realistically the main crux of this report, is more of adjustments to permissions on your sites or deletions of sites. So if I can say, hey, I want to see who deleted sites in the last duration of time, I can see that Andrea deleted 2 separate sites, and there was an AD SharePoint sync user who also deleted a site collection. So again, this might be a nice report to easily track down again, who's been adjusting permissions in case things get out of whack. You can kind of hunt that down. Again, the organization settings, these are really going to be mostly applicable to the options that are inside this settings section here, in the sense of any of these being modified. So if you say, hey, we want to disallow notifications from SharePoint, or maybe we want to allow users to add comments on modern pages, delete the option of users creating new sites. any of these options would be tracked via the organization settings. So if you ever want to track any of those modifications, this is the means to do so. The next kind of report that we will kind of briefly touch on is the data access governance reports. And there's a specific one about sharing links. Now, to not get your hopes up too high, this is going to be a little bit simpler than probably what you desire it. Realistically, this is more of a quick high-level audit of what type of links have been shared overall, and in what site collections are they being shared on type of idea. If you really want, in our previous webinars, we've talked about the idea of the audit reports inside the Compliance Center. That might be where you really want to get the more nitty-gritty answers, but this will give you a high-level overview of the number of shares that have happened within the last 28 days. So these ones are, again, kind of are pre-built in the sense of we cannot adjust the duration of time that we are looking back. Again, it is only 28 days back from today's date. And then we can also click any of these ones here. So these are going to be the specific types of shares that are available to you. So specific people with links externally. So in essence, I typed in a guest user's email address and I share a document with them. That's going to be the specific people with links shared externally. People within your organization, that's going to be kind of granting anybody within your domain the capability of accessing this link. So that would be the share button or the copy link button. And then also the anyone links, which is going to be that anonymous access sharing control, which again, your organization may not even have this enabled in the sense of allowing users to share anonymously. So that one may not actually ever be able to be used by you. But whenever you do run one of these, whenever you do get results, you get taken to a page that shows you kind of all the different sites that have potentially been shared within the organization. And again, it gives you just a count of number of links that have been shared through the type of method. So as of right now on this site right here, we have a total of 3 people within our organization links shared on that site collection. Now, again, even when you do this download detailed report, it really doesn't give you too much more in the sense of, hey, it pretty much gives you the exact same data that we just saw there, but it gives you an Excel workbook, and also there's some additional information about, is there any sort of sensitivity labels on the site, what type of site template it is, some additional information, which again, may or may not give you value, but I do wish to kind of convey that, hey, this is available to you. So then if you do need to go do a more thorough audit in the Compliance Center, you can kind of start off from here. There will likely be some additional kind of reports that we might cover in the next webinar or future webinars that also comes with the Advanced Management Report. But that's all we're going to be covering today, so I'll pass it back on to you, Hayden.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Leona. Data governance is becoming one of those things that it's not a want to, it's a must have in today's environment, especially with cybersecurity. And as I'm sure most of you guys know, especially if you're within IT, sharing out data might be easy to manage when it has low employee thresholds, but as you guys continue to grow, this is more and more useful and needed from a very high level admin setting control. So very excited to learn about that, Leona. Thank you for sharing that, and I look forward to additional teachings on the different data governance audit controls that we can look into. With that said, Katie will now teach us about page anchors and bookmarks for those SharePoint pages that are a little too long in format. Thank you so much. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Hayden. So hi, everyone. So we are going to be talking about a very useful feature for organizing and navigating long SharePoint pages. And that's the SharePoint anchors, also known as bookmarks. So whether you're working on long documents, team wikis, or internal pages, maybe an FAQ page, page anchors are going to allow you to guide users directly to specific sections with just a simple click. So why are they important? Well, imagine scrolling a really long SharePoint page filled with tons of text, images, and sections. Without anchors, you'd be manually scrolling up and down the page, searching for the right information. You can imagine that gets pretty frustrating, especially if you're in a hurry or you need to direct your team or stakeholders to precise content. So by using page anchors, we essentially create a shortcut on the page and create a page navigation system. So let's take a look at a couple of ways that we could use that. So I have a simple page here that you could see it's pretty long, and it does have multiple different sections in it. So what I did using the page anchors was essentially create a little breadcrumb trail that will help you navigate to the certain section. So if you're looking for information on training, you could simply click that and it will scroll down to the page to the training section. So how do you get the anchored links? So when you use a text web part, you have different text options. So you can see we're just in normal text right now, but you do have a couple of different heading options. So you have H2, 3, and 4. So with any of these headers, SharePoint will actually automatically create an anchor link for you. So you could see right here, I have a H2 header. When you go and republish the page, and you hover next to a header, you'll see this little link icon come up right here. And if you look at the bottom left of the corner of the screen, you'll actually see that the link pops up right there. So in order to capture that, you could right click onto that little icon and select copy link. Once you have that link, you could enter it into either a quick link, a button, or you could use another text web part and link directly to that. So you could see in my little breadcrumb trail, I have all the sections linked up except for FAQs. We could see that that's not a clickable action right there. So let's go ahead and add that together. So we'll go down to where the FAQs are, and I'll go ahead, right click and copy that link. I could put the page into edit, highlight what I want the link to be, and click hyperlink. So right in this box, I could paste that address in. You can optionally choose to open in a new tab if you want, and hit save. When we republish, we now have a working link that will take us to the FAQ section. We also can do FAQ pages using the same feature with collapsible sections. So if you have specific questions that you want to highlight, maybe on a different page, you could set up this out-of-the-box FAQ format with a collapsible section, and you could link to that question. So if on your HR page, you want to link to maybe benefit information, you could copy that and put that in a quick link saying benefits, and users will be able to click that and go directly to that section. So very simple to use, but very handy as well. Back to you, Hayden.
Thank you so much, Katie. That is so awesome. You know, some of these features that we're talking today, including this one, are already available on your tenant, like Michael was saying. And it's amazing just to learn about these nuances of just changing the text form to header 2 or header 3 or header 4 to get some of these capabilities. You know, best practices, we always try to keep content to a consumable amount on each site and page, but sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes you need everything in one place. And so these links will help you be able to sort through those efficiently. So thank you so much, Katie, for going over that. Next up, we are going to be talking about pre-fill value links within Microsoft Forms, and that will be presented by our very own Dylan. Over to you, Dylan.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And yeah, so in today's presentation, we'll learn about this pre-filled link feature in Microsoft Forms. And I'll show you a scenario how you can actually make this dynamic so that we can actually tie items from SharePoint, like a list or a list item or a document, to your Microsoft form. What's nice about this, as opposed to maybe having to go down the route of using something like a Power Apps Canvas app, or a just full-on custom development, like using SPFX. This is just an easy to use tool that you already have, that's included with basically all licenses for the most part in 365. And a lot of people are already familiar with Microsoft Forms. So this can be nice to actually go ahead and auto populate values from your sites, your SharePoint sites, into a Microsoft form. And with that in mind, I'll just cover a few of these little terms here, already talking about it a little bit, and then I'll just show some examples, some scenarios. So the pre-filled link, just to explain a little bit, what I'm talking about is actually there's a feature in the form that'll do it for you, but what it's doing is it's creating what's called like query strings. So it's appending values to the URL. So that whenever you click that link, those values are up in the URL, and it uses that to populate into your form. And query strings is something that's used in a lot of web development and SharePoint. And so this is just a way you actually don't have to do it. It'll construct it for you, which is nice. And then been talking about it already, but the Microsoft Forms, just to explain, you probably will see it as an app in your site. You may have already used it. A lot of people seem to try that out, and usually used for things like quizzes, maybe a suggestion or feedback. It could even be used for things like signing up for an event, or related to some kind of campaign, or whatever you may be doing, something for marketing. So, there's tend to be some of those things, like maybe rating something or trivia, whatever it is. But this is another way you could use it for requests. And then the last piece, which you may touch on, you may already be familiar with, but it's just Power Automate. So that may be something at the end I'll show as well. And that's just the in-house automation tool that you could use to run some stuff, after you submit a form. So I'll show that a little bit as well. So anyways, I'll go on and pull onto the screen and walk through some of this and what we're talking about. So basically, when I'm talking about a pre-filled link, I'll just show the solution real quick, which it's, if I was to click my sign up with MS Forms, what I'm actually talking about is populating values. You can see it's actually passing values from my list item. It's passing the current user, which is me. It's passing the ID. It's passing the name of the event, the capacity for the event, directly to the form. And it's actually getting passed in the URL. And so I'll show you how you can do that. But this is kind of what we're talking about. And then just to show one other example as well, which I'm going to just hit the back button, and is a little like change request form for documents. So I actually have a document roll up here. I want to request a change for one of these. I can click this form, and I have this request form here. When I go to the bottom, I actually see it's populating some values that'll actually tie this form to that document. The ID, just the name of it, the constant type. So it's kind of nice, as in, you could have a form where users don't have to go ahead and select different values to tie it to something that you have, like a document or item or whatever it may be, or even a request type. You could have that auto populate. And so I'll show you, it's pretty simple to do in Microsoft Forms. So I'll go over here to Microsoft Forms, where I've already got one of my forms pulled up here. This is that request form. So basically, when you have your form open, there is this option, and I can even walk through it. So when you pull up one of your forms, you'll actually see there's this get prefilled URL. So it's just right there when you're working on your form. And when you hit that, it just opens the form and lets you go ahead and select which fields you want to pre-populate. You can see I'm just filling out some different fields. And then just make sure that radio button at the top is enabled. And then what happens is when I scroll down, I can say get prefilled link. And so this link contains all those values from the form that I just filled out. So it's tying different values that I filled out. And so that if anyone clicked this link, so just to show you, paste this link in that I copied. You can see it's just pre-populating those different fields. So by default, this pre-fill link is static, as in I just filled out some stuff on the form. And then when I said get pre-filled link, those values are just hard coded so that it's always product quality, or if I filled out a text field that said test, it's, just going to say test. But I'll just show you now how we could actually make that little piece dynamic, and which it can be pretty useful. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my little page that I had set up. So on my page, just to show, one way you could use this, these at the top, these quick links that I'm showing here, these would be the static example. So these are both the same form, but if I click, I want to do a product improvement, this one is just going to default to product improvement as the type. And if I go over to the service enhancement, that's, populating the service enhancement. But what I'll show you now, just scrolling down, is how I accomplish just to make it dynamic. So that basically, if I have events, and I'll even just open this list to show you. So let's say I've just got a list of different things that you could sign up for. So class event, I have this, maybe there's a conference or whatever. So what I've got is my sign up link. And just to show you as well, this would be like the Power Apps method. But if that's doesn't really seem feasible to go that route, because you could also do that for populating it. You could have your Microsoft Forms. This one's dynamic. And basically the way you accomplish that, at least in this scenario here, is with a little JSON formatting. So this would be potentially the one technical piece would be a snippet. And then basically this is how I'm constructing it, where I'm just changing out the static value, like where maybe I had a value equal test, I change it out now to be the title. Where, the capacity I had it auto set to 4, I can pass whatever the capacity is for that event, by just referencing that field. So this would be the one snippet piece that would be a little, that would just require a little more, where you're kind of constructing, changing out the static value to make it dynamic based off whatever fields you need in your list or your document library. And then just the one thing to keep in mind, if you were already familiar and wanted to try this out, is these fields that you reference here, you'd want to have these in your view. So, if I wanted to reference the ID, the title, the capacity here, you'd probably want to make sure that those fields are in your view, which you're going to pass to this link. And then just to show the other one, so this is the JSON formatting on a little sign up column that I set up. And then if I come back, also, just another idea, I'm actually using like the custom search web part here. So this would just be another way you could do the same thing. And instead of JSON formatting, I'm using the sort of little HTML template feature that's available. But anyways, the point is that making it dynamic, there's multiple ways you can make it dynamic. These are just would be two maybe popular ways to do it. So you can see the same idea here. I'm just making this link dynamic by changing out, adding my list item ID, the title and the constant type. So those would be potentially two popular ways that you could make that dynamic using the JSON formatting or like a search web part. Of course, yeah, if you just wanted to even just maybe have a general suggestion form and then have a link for each site. So like on HR, it passes the HR value IT. So you could do it that way too, and just have like for a scenario where you only need the values to be static. Then it would just be a matter of switching out your prefilled URL to be IT or HR or whatever it is. But this one I'm showing here, which just requires that other little technical piece, is setting up some formatting so it'll be dynamic. And then the last thing, so if you wanted to, like I have in my example, so I have my class sign up calendar, where I can actually select my different the different events and see who has signed up. I'm actually passing the value. I need to pass my submissions from Microsoft Forms back to a list. So I have my attendees who have signed up. So I've got myself here. And if you want to do that piece, because by default, the Microsoft Forms, those submissions don't live in SharePoint. So what you can do is you can have a little flow that triggers. And it's just a basic flow, doesn't require any sort of premium actions that I'm aware of. And it's just, when a response is submitted, there's a Microsoft Forms actions you can use. So just anytime a form is submitted on my class sign up, I do a get response, which just gives you all the fields from that submission. And then I just create an item in SharePoint and pass whatever values I want from that Microsoft form to my list. And so that basically, anytime someone submits an item, using that request form, it'll just go to my SharePoint list, and then the items are now tied because you can see I pass like the related ID, the event lookup, the attendee, construct the title based off the event name and the responder's email. So whenever you come back to SharePoint, and if I go to my list, which I think I have open here, so you can see all my submissions here, which are getting populated by Power Automate. So these two are my new tests, and so it's just populating all those values from the form that were captured back into my SharePoint list. And so now you can see these are tied. So pretty nice if you want to avoid having to go the route of something like Power Apps or other types of custom development to auto pass values. Now, one caveat, if you want to use the Microsoft Forms, if you're not aware of it, is it only has basic type of fields. So if you needed users to fill out complex fields like lookups to data, like maybe other lists, or you need like person fields where they need to fill out people from your directory, things like that in the form, this wouldn't be a good solution. But if those could be values that are passed to the form, and then you only need the simple type of fields like text fields, choice fields, this would work. So just something to keep in mind, if you really need more complexity to the form, you're still going to need to go with something else like a different kind of tool, like Power Apps or something like that. But could be useful depending on your scenario, and pretty nice. And it's rarely available with most licensing, so could be something to check out. Let's see. I think with that in mind, I'll hand it back over, and that will conclude my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. Efficiency, making sure everything's dynamic. I know sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose, and so you're trying to figure out all these systems to set up. But usually the more complex the systems, the easier it is on the user and the cleaner the data is at the end of the day. So with that said, thank you so much, Dylan, and thanks again to all of our presenters today, Ken, John, Leona, Katie, for today's presentations. That does conclude our learning portions of today. I hope we've been able to spark some new, interesting things for you and your teams to explore. Please be on the lookout in your email for our next webinar, which will be in October. We look forward to learning with you next month. Before we segue into the Q&A section of this webinar, I do want to remind everyone that all webinar notes, slides, and recordings will be on our learning portal for easy access to everything discussed today for our SharePoint support clients. If for some reason you don't have access to that, or you'd like to gain access to the learning portal, please just reach out to us after the webinar, and we'll make sure you get set up. Our learning portal is where you can find all the materials from not just today's webinar, but any future webinar recordings and materials as well. So it's a very nifty tool to have in your toolbox. All right. With that said, we will now segue into an open live Q&A forum. If you don't plan on staying for the live Q&A, I want to say thanks again to learning with us today. On screen, we are showing some instructions on how to raise your hand to ask questions to one of our presenters. Your mic will be unmuted and questions will be taken in order of hand raised. Also, Carol, I do see that you had that question in the Q&A. I think Ken did answer that for you, but if not, just let us know and we'll make sure to answer that at this time as well. So. Looks like we got one question, hand raised by John. Someone could unmute John real quick.
And John, you should be able to.
Yeah, there we go.
There you
okay.
go.
So the question for Ken, going back to your Word example. So I've been doing something similar with, we have a software inventory list that we maintain. This used to be a big, nasty Word document that was manually updated. I now have this set up as a series of lists that we update within SharePoint. And then it and anytime a list is updated, it updates the fields in the Word document. The problem is I have these 3 interrelated lists, and I'm trying to figure out a way other than using a master document, because that feature is really wonky, to get it all updating anytime there's an update to any of the lists, and I am using the premium feature.
I'm sorry, you broke up at the very end there. Could you restate the question?
Sure. So I'm trying to pull data. I guess the point here is I'm trying to pull data from multiple lists.
Mhm.
And there's like in some lists there's a one-to-one relationship, and some there's a many-to-one relationship. And other than using a master document, I'm trying to figure out a good way to force an update anytime I update any of the items in the list.
Yeah, the technique that I demonstrated today is ideal for solving that kind of situation, because you could, you'd probably wind up having to have one flow per list, though you could do a solution with a master flow and then just have the triggers on the list, right? That then calls the master flow. But generally speaking, you know, because I'm thinking about, you know, you don't want to have to trigger manually, right? Because you say, yeah, if I add a record, or if I update a record in one of these lists, just go ahead and update the master document, right? So then, because Power Automate can handle one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many just as data, right? You're not going to have any issue that you could actually just pull that data into the flow and then manipulate it using that select command to build the table out the way you want it to look for whatever section you're filling out in the Word document. So it would be perfect for what you're looking to do. And its only downside is that it is a premium action. But other than that, once you play with it, I suspect if you were to go out and just kind of, you know, play around for about an hour, you'd be really pleased with the results.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ken. And thank you, John, for your question. Let us know if we need to help out with any of that or walk you through it. But yeah, that was great. Anyone else have any questions or things to discuss? Oh, looks like we have Alejandro has his hand up. If we can unmute his mic as well.
Sure,
All
thank you
right.
so much. So my question is, earlier you guys mentioned those 3 reports in the SharePoint Admin Center. So I'm looking at my tenant right now, and I only see the report for OneDrive accounts. I must have missed what they were called earlier, but is there like a particular license that we need in order to have those appear, or is that a feature that doesn't exist yet and you guys are just showing it?
It's a license. You need a specific additional license that you have to go out and get out of the box, which is the SharePoint Advanced Management Plan 1. I'll drop that in the chat for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Could security or permissions also be a thing with that, Leona?
No, it's
okay.
as soon as if you have access to the SharePoint admin portal, you'll be able to see it if you have the license for that as well. So it's like a double thing.
Perfect. Awesome.
Alejandro, they also offer a 30-day trial, so you can try it out for free for a month.
Oh, thank you so much.
Perfect for proof of concepts if you needed to get approved, upper management or anything like that. So great question. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions or need to discuss anything? Like 5 more seconds. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining in today, learning with us. Again, we'll be back next month. Be on the lookout for that email, and we look forward to learning with you again. Thank you so much.